Thanks everybody for coming out, especially for an early morning start for this. I definitely appreciate that. First of all, I know that not everybody in the room is probably works at the same kind of company, and I have to sort of full disclosure, I'm a product person, so I focus on my world as product teams, and I just want to be clear, product companies. I think that is actually most of you in the room, but probably not all. If you're responsible, if you're coaching teams, for example, or working on a team that is building, say, an internal HR application just for your own use, of course you can get real benefits out of Agile, and I think, but that's not my world. My world is tech product companies, people that use technology to power their business and power the experience they provide their customers. The general litmus test is if the technology you're building goes down for whatever reason. If that immediately impacts your actual paying customer's experience, that's product. If it doesn't, if it's just people in your HR department get a little frustrated, that's internal IT. So it's a pretty high bar for tech product. And that's, oh, maybe this is cousin. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about, tech product world. I will also say, I'll probably use the phrase product team a lot. I'm not talking about the set of people that are product managers or product owners. When we say product team in the tech product space, I'm talking what a lot of people would refer to as, Spotify would refer to as a squad. These are cross-functional, usually a product manager that is the product owner, a designer, and some number of engineers, usually between 2 and 10 engineers. And that is our unit, and that's where everything actually happens. You can call them a durable product team if you like lean startup lingo, or squads, or we just call them product teams. Okay, so I actually started, I was trying to remember exactly when, but starting in about 2003, 2004, I started working with a couple little startups as well. One was a startup, Salesforce.com, and then not a startup anymore. And also a company that's really fascinating, really a thought leader in a lot of technology in the rest of the world, which is the BBC in London. And both of those two companies were experimenting with Agile. And I had been sort of advising them, and I really liked what I saw, and that was sort of my first experience. In my first book, which was 11 years ago, I was a very strong advocate for Agile, and I still am actually a very strong advocate for Agile. I will, there's no secret probably to this room that it's in fashion right now to beat up on Agile, right? That's what happens. I think, if I want to be very clear, I can very quickly pressure a company into moving to Agile if they're not there. Honestly, I don't find many that aren't, at least using some form. It's usually Scrum. And if they're not, I show them why that's so bad. That said, what I really wanted to talk about was, I think it's a fair statement that Agile has not delivered on its promise for most people, most companies. And that really bothers me, and I think I know why. And that's really the focus of this talk. Now, if you boil it down, and we always have to peel away all the religion that gets associated with process. So peel all that away. There's really two things that really caused me to be a strong advocate for Agile methods. The first one, which is really very practical, and we learned a long time ago. We learned this before Agile. We learned that you need to be, each product team needs to be releasing their software no less than once every 2 weeks. Now, of course, that's nothing to brag about. Great teams, as you all know, are releasing many times a day. But no less than every 2 weeks. When you find teams that are releasing monthly or crazy, sometimes quarterly, this is, just so you know, they might be saying they're doing some form of Agile, but that is in no sense, in any meaningful sense, Agile. Now, that's not this talk. Hopefully everybody in this room already understands why releasing no less than every 2 weeks is very critical for our customers and for us. It's just a little bit of math that's behind that. It's easy to explain. I've written about it. I can talk to you afterward. But I'm hoping that we can assume that everybody knows that the first really pillar of getting the benefits of Agile are frequent, small releases. And that's defined as no less than every 2 weeks. A lot of teams argue that's way too infrequent. It should be closer to at least twice a week kind of thing. All right, that's one. And honestly, most teams I meet, they are long. They've been doing that a decade. They figured that out. And of course, as you guys know more than most, the first time they do that, it's kind of rough. It usually means they have to invest in test and release automation to get there. But once they do that, it's really significant benefits, again, for our customers and for us. The other pillar, really, of Agile is this idea that we empower teams to figure out great solutions. Now, that's the one that I think most teams don't really get. And that's what I wanted to talk about here. I will tell you that what I'm about to say, I want to be careful. This is not a difference between Silicon Valley and Arizona. This is a problem right in the heart of Silicon Valley. I mean, literally in downtown San Francisco, you can have two companies across the street from each other, and one is using real best practices, working like a great tech product company, and the other one is so far behind. You can't believe it. And easily a decade or two behind. And this difference really frustrates me. And most of my work is oriented around closing that gap. And I would argue that's what this talk is about. All right. Now, normally, this is what I like to talk about. I'm not going to talk about that today, but this really is my favorite topic. Most teams focus on building, and they get that. I want to be clear, Agile, I'm hoping you can all, at least for today, it's not about velocity, right? Velocity is important. It's a means, not the ends. But we do want to make sure that we are building consistently and quickly. But really what we need to do is make sure we're solving problems for our company and for our customer. And so that's way beyond velocity. Now, the terms that I talk about with that, and lots of people do, is that we not only need to deliver good product and software, we need to discover good product and software. So those are really the two parts of the problem. Lots of people talk about delivery. You probably had lots of workshops on them even here. I focus more on discovery because I find that's a lot more confusion for teams. They just really not nearly as advanced in discovery. And discovery is really like, how do we decide what we should actually build? That's what it is. How do you actually decide what to build? If you're a really weak team, you don't even worry about that. You just build what you're told to. Because you wait for management to give you a roadmap and you say, okay, we'll go build it. But in a product company, that's not really how it works. It's not how it needs to work. We're actually given problems to solve. We have to figure out those solutions. So it's a lot harder. Now, when we talk about figure out solutions, we're looking for solutions that are valuable. What that means is people will buy it or choose to use it if it's a free service. Usable, they can figure out how to use it. Feasible, we know how to build it. And viable, it works for the rest of our company. We can sell it, market it. It's legal. It supports the privacy constraints that we have, the financial constraints. That's what we mean by viable. In discovery, we're trying to come up with solutions that have those four characteristics. And we have a bunch of techniques, quantitative and qualitative techniques to do that. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I can spend a full, really 10-hour day just talking about the techniques of discovery. I do this a lot with the teams I work with. Some of you have actually sat through that, so you know. I love the topic because really what product is all about is solving hard problems with lots of constraints. And I love doing that. I bet a lot of you love doing that too. And so, here's the thing though. Even though this is my favorite topic, I have to admit that in a lot of the companies I meet, it's not that hard to teach them this, but then I find that they're not actually allowed to work this way.
Yep.
And this is like a dagger to my heart. This really kills me, especially because I see so much talent all over the world, literally all over the world, that is just wasted talent. And I know why. It just bothers me. So I decided actually a few months ago that for the next at least 1 or 2 years, this is the problem I want to focus on. I want to tackle this. This is, I think, on the harder. I would also argue this is the most important problem in our industry. For those of you in the room that might be in a company that just happens to be in the sights of Amazon, then I would argue that you don't have a choice. You will either become good at what we're going to talk about, or you will be looking for a job, realistically. Now, I'll tell you, if you think you're not in the sights of Amazon, you probably should think again. They have a huge appetite, and they have skills. They really are good at what we're going to talk about. And they're not the only one. They're just kind of the poster child, because if you follow the news, literally every single week, they're taking down another competitor. And it's not really that they take down the competitor, it's that they take care of the competitor's customers better than the competitor was. So that's what this is about. All right, so let's try to make this real. When we talk about teams, there really are these 2 kinds of teams out there. The first kind, and honestly this is most of them, despite my efforts and other efforts, this is most of them, let's admit it. In most organizations, the teams exist to serve the business. In fact, that phrase, the business, whenever you hear that, that's a big flag, big red flag. That is not that's really not, in my opinion, why you're paid and hired working for your company. We're there for a different purpose. We're there to serve our customers, the company's customers. That's not colleagues, employees of your company. The real paying customers of your company in ways that your customers love, but work for your business. So you can't ignore the business. They have very real constraints all across. But the purpose, the reason they pay the money they do for tech product teams, squads, these cross-functional teams, is to do this. Now, my goal is to get most companies working like this. John Doerr is one of my favorite venture capitalists. He's invested in a lot of the big Google and eBay and Amazon. He likes to say, look, we need teams of missionaries, not teams of mercenaries. And to be clear, the first model is known as the mercenary model. That is where you just hire some developers in a basement or in India and say, go work, go build this. The second model is the missionary model. And so sometimes people call this product culture. You may have heard that phrase, or product mindset. And sometimes people call the first one IT mindset or IT culture. So it goes by lots. Actually, another one is, the first one is often referred to as command and control culture. Top down, you've all seen it. It goes by lots of names, none of which are flattering. Right? Okay. So I want to talk about what it really means to have truly empowered teams. Now, I think you'll see, I do not mean that in a marketing fluff sense. We really need to drill down here. I don't know a more accurate word than empowered team. Autonomous is close, but autonomous is a little misleading, because no team really, other than a true 10-person startup, no team really has true autonomy, but they can absolutely be truly empowered. So autonomy is part of it, but I don't think that's as sort of fair representation. So let's first start I want to be clear. I am not even close to the first person that has argued for why truly empowered teams are the way to go. This is old news. These are just my top 10 favorite books. Honestly, and I am constantly, I have many more, so just to limit to 10 is hard. And people, I just got an email last night and somebody said, oh, have you heard of this one? There's lots of books. They all make the same case. That look, command and control doesn't get us consistent innovation. Truly empowered team model does. They all make this case. If you haven't read it, they're all really inspiring books. I would encourage you to read them. But I have to admit, they've hardly convinced anybody. It's true. So most companies, even though those were not minor books, a lot of them are very popular books. The first one, if you're going to read one, it would be just one. It would be Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last. But even Simon Sinek says in his book, he knows most people aren't going to listen to this. It's funny. But it's true. For some reason, most companies don't empower their teams. Now, this is not a secret, really. It's frustrating, but it's not a secret. Most of my work is the venture capital community will introduce me to a company in their portfolio, and I'll sit down with them. I learned a long time ago I like to start by meeting the teams, especially the engineers. Just give me 10 minutes with the engineers, and I could easily tell which model they're in and how it works. You know, engineers can't hide this. It's easy. So. And then I usually will go then to the CEO and sit down with the CEO and say, all right, you know you're still trying to run this in you're trying to run this in command and control. You know why the team is not motivated. You know why they're just, frustrated. We know that, right? And yeah, they know it. But it's like, so why? Why are you running like this? Why aren't you running like Google? Or why aren't you running like Netflix? Or especially some of them know better. And I can usually pry out of them the answer, which is they don't trust the teams. That's really the honest answer. They don't always fess up to that right away, but it's really what's going on. Now, this is sort of a multi-layered thing. I mean, I think it's an absolute. They do not trust the teams. And because they don't trust the teams, they feel like the executives need to get together, do these quarterly roadmaps and tell the teams what to do. All right. So, but then, all right, why don't they trust the teams? Well, sometimes because they will point out, in fact, look, they'll tell me, the CEO will tell me, look, you've talked to those teams. Oh, do you think would you trust them? And a lot of times they're right. I wouldn't trust them. I've got to be honest. I wouldn't trust them. And mostly it's the product manager, just to be clear. We'll come back to that. Teams are only as good as those product managers. And by the way, because I should be clear here, product owner is the role on an Agile team. Product manager is the title of the job that has that role. Okay, and some companies make the mistake of separating those two. They have a product manager and a product owner. Let me just say for now, that's broken. And if you want to know more about that, I just Google the term and you'll see lots of articles I've written about why that's broken. But practices, the product manager is the job. They have many responsibilities. The product owner responsibility is roughly 10% of their job. But you know what? A lot of product managers, they've never been trained to be a product manager. They've usually been trained in the responsibilities of a product owner. They've taken a CSPO class. They know how to operate Jira. Who cares? All right. So then I point out to these CEOs, though, look, dude, who hired these people? Right? You hired them, so if you can't trust them, it is on you. So this is why it's a multi-layered thing, and we need to talk about this, which is why, and I will warn you, this is a huge topic that we're about to embark on here. And let's start. 3 companies that everybody's heard of. You probably know that's 3 of the most valuable companies on the planet. Apple they'd just gone over $1 trillion, and they step back a little bit, but 3 of the most valuable companies in the world. Now, there are also tech companies, which, of course, for those of us in the industry, that's good. But if any of you have, like me, been inside all of these companies, you know that they're actually radically different companies. Their cultures are so different. In fact, I put them like this on purpose because they're pretty much, these 2 are polar opposite cultures, just like way different. Apple's kind of in the middle. And yet, all 3 of them are consistent innovators. That's really what distinguishes them. I would argue that's what got them to the point of most valuable companies in the world. Consistent product innovation. And what a lot of people don't realize, though, and this is why I realized that culture is not really the right term for this whole discussion. Because look, they're all different cultures. So it's not that, it's something deeper. And that's what I really want to zoom in on. Now, what a lot of people don't realize, even in Silicon Valley, they don't realize this. So these 3 companies, in their first decade, in their formative years, so there's 4 co-founders, right? Bezos, Steve Jobs, and Larry and Sergey at Google, and then a few years later, Eric Schmidt. Those 4 and then 5 co-founders, all of them were actually coached by the same person. Literally, same person. Bill Campbell, who was known as the coach of Silicon Valley. Sadly, he passed away a couple years ago. But this guy literally coached those founders in how to build a tech company. He also coached, by the way, many others. I wish I could say he had coached me. I had met him several times, but I never was lucky enough to be one of those directly coached by him. But I count myself as one of the people that benefited from him because I worked directly for 2 people that had been coached directly by him. And so his teachings kind of went to me. In fact, about a decade ago, I wrote an article about his teachings and what he really believes and advocates around leadership and around teams. And I asked him to review it, and he did, but then he said, please don't publish it, because he wants all the attention to be on the people he coaches. And it's true, even when he passed away, there was very little press coverage. He didn't like that, so he's relatively unknown. But let me give you a sense of this guy. And he's a totally genuine guy. It's hard to really communicate that unless you've met him, but he is a truly sincere person. I love this quote. Leadership is about recognizing there's greatness in everyone, and your job is to create an environment where that greatness can emerge. So if you think about Google, Amazon, and Apple, I would argue that the founders of those companies each had their own way of doing it, but that's exactly what they did. This is really the difference between those companies and so many other companies. One of the things that I think is a huge myth out there is that people think that those companies have just this disproportionate number of rock star employees, and that's sort of the key. But it's really not. It truly is not. They have pretty ordinary people, just very similar, I'm sure, to the people in your company. The difference is they put them in an environment where they can actually do great things. That really is the difference. I've been doing this now 35 years of exclusively tech product teams, and that is probably the biggest thing I've learned. In fact, Google did some great research a few years ago. They've been studying the idea of effective product teams probably as long or longer than anybody, certainly longer than any academic institution I know. And they actually published their results, which you can read yourself under something called Project Aristotle. And it talks about what really makes great teams. And surprisingly, it is not putting a bunch of sort of rock stars, also known as 10Xers, together. The best teams are actually very ordinary people that are just good people that are working together in these cross-functional empowered teams. And that's what I'm going to try to show you. Now, there's a lot to talk about because for that to happen, it might sound easy, it's hard. And it starts at the top of the company and goes all the way down to your hiring of every engineer, every designer, every product manager. So that's where we're going. So Bill started by talking about leadership, and I wanted to start right there. This is actually Mike Fisher. He is currently the CTO of Etsy. For many of you probably heard of Etsy, the marketplace in Brooklyn. This is another very good company. I first met Mike, though, he was running engineering at PayPal when I was running product at eBay. So it was 20 years ago. And actually, Marty Abbott, who I didn't show his picture here, but by the way, is a local to the area. But Marty was the CTO of eBay. And more relevant, I think, both Marty and Mike went to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, and then both of them served in U.S. Special Forces. And I say that because they are two of the best leaders I have ever seen. And my belief is that, and they certainly argue this, in Special Forces, this whole talk about empowered product team, this is not it's not an option. You either do that, you either do empowered teams or you die. So it's a different level of consequence. And anyway, these guys write a lot about leadership, and I love their stuff, and I have quoted them many times. But I love this point because I'm trying to draw the distinction here between leadership and management. They're both critical. They're different responsibilities. Obviously, most leaders are also managers, but not every manager is a leader. That's fine. We'll talk about both. But yeah, leadership is really about inspiring the organization, and management is about guiding them to the objectives. So we need both. In fact, let me mention one thing. There are two casualties I see to the growth of Agile over the last 10, 15 years. These are unintended, I believe. Totally unintended consequences. And don't get me wrong, I still am advocating all the time whenever I meet a company that doesn't use Agile that they need to get their act together and move. But the two unintended consequences, the first one is the skills of product managers actually gone down because now so many of them think all they need to do is be trained as a product owner. So we have that issue, I mentioned that before. The other one is that you guys have probably heard this many times. An engineering manager, their organization has just been trained in, say, Scrum. The engineering manager comes to the Agile coach and says, what am I supposed to do? It's like most of my job is gone. You're telling me to back off and let the teams kind of figure this out. So here's the thing. The move to Agile caused a lot of managers to back off. That's good and bad. Well, we didn't need less management, we needed better management. Going to truly empowered teams is actually harder than the old command and control model. So backing off is not helpful. And that's not what we're trying to get them to do. What we are trying to do is get them to up their game. So there's at least as much effort that needs to be put into helping the managers if you want to transition an organization to truly get the benefits of Agile as you spend time with the actual members of the teams themselves. That's a big topic and big difference. You know, I'll also mention this. Many of you probably work at companies that have a digital transformation initiative, right? I mean, I see that all the time, and I always laugh, just because they almost never do anything. right? They're just all theater, all theater. And what's really going on is they don't realize what they really need to do is tackle what I'm talking about here. They think it's easy and they just assign a few people and it's going to happen. It's not the way it works. So I think this will give you a better sense of what it takes to really pull that off. And it starts by looking at leadership and management. I don't have enough time to really go into depth. The topic of leadership is a solid day right there. But I can mention, if you really want empowered teams, then there are 5 big things that we are counting on from our leaders. The first, and when I say leaders here, I especially means head of product, head of design, head of engineering or technology. And then for most companies, that would also include the CEO. All right, so the role of leaders. First of all, the product vision. If you've got 10 product teams, the vision is the ties them together. It's the common purpose. It's that North Star that every team, because remember, if we want teams to make good choices, we need to give them the context. This is the context. So every team knows. Another really rookie mistake that a lot of companies make is they have every product team create their own vision, which is missing the point, right? This is organization. This is the unifying thing. And I would also mention on vision, that's our single best recruiting tool for strong product design and engineering people. So it is worth your time to make sure you have a great vision. Product strategy is our path to getting from where we are now to the vision. Visions are normally, for software companies, 3 to 5 years out, and for device or hardware companies, 5 to 10 years out. So it's several years out. The worst thing we could do, this is sort of product 101, is try to please all our customers in one product release. That would be guaranteed to fail. So what we want is an intelligent strategy. Now, that's its own huge topic. There's a lot of ways to do product strategy, a lot of good ways to do it. The most common is it's a sequence of product market fits, if you know what that is. If you don't, it's another time. All right, so product principles slice across our product. These tackle the hard questions these aren't requirements or anything like that. This is more of the nature of what we're trying to build. So for example, in marketplaces like an Uber or an Airbnb, let's use the Airbnb example. Airbnb has to make some choices between the needs of the property owners and the people, those of us renting. Most of the time it's all good, but several times there will be conflicts. What's good for one is bad for the other. So principles help us address those and make good choices on issues like that. Product priorities. Look, we can never do everything we want to do. That's just the reality. In every company I've ever been in, you can never do everything they want to do, the company. So if the leaders don't make choices as to what's most important, the teams are forced to guess. So you get 20 teams randomly guessing, and of course, everybody making different assumptions. It's on the leaders to make those choices. Most companies I work with today are using a system called OKRs. How many are using OKRs here? Just so I can see. All right, roughly half. So OKR is an objective-based system. There are several such systems. OKR just hit a tipping point a few years ago because Google and LinkedIn and Facebook had hit a decade of using it, and so everybody decided that was the one they wanted to move to. It is not a perfect system, but it's the most popular, probably the best one I know of for this, but it's also completely abused. You've probably heard it. In fact, if your company's tried it, my guess is they've had a lot of grief for the first several quarters because there's some predictable mistakes. But the first one is, in a product company, there's really only 2 levels of objectives we care about. The organization's objectives and each product team's objectives. So the organization needs to decide, and this is usually done at the annual level, once a year, what are the top objectives for the year? What are we going to work on for the year? Not features, these are business objectives. It might be expanding to China. It might be reducing our churn problem in our product. But they're high business problems. And then finally, evangelism. The leaders have to spend time. Look, if you want a team of missionaries, you have to actually spend time preaching and converting. That's what you need to do. You need to sell, and you need to do it constantly. You need to persuade the teams why this is awesome. You need to persuade other executives across the company, and you need to persuade investors very often, in many companies also customers. Now, so that's evangelism. This is typically the responsibility of the head of product. Like I said, they will have help from their head of technology and design and CEO, but most of these five have the accountability is with the head of product. All right. I also want to make this real for you because I don't want this to sound like it's all abstract. So I have some examples of all the things I want to argue. Stacy is a startup co-founder. A startup founder, actually. She started it herself. She was a practicing vet in Colorado and frustrated. She actually went for several years, very frustrated with the lack of technology. I mean, it's not really fair to say lack of technology. There was and still is several vendors that provide solutions for vet clinics. But they were terrible. And she was frustrated. She kept calling more of them to come in because she believed there had to be something better. And she believed this was really compromising the care of the animals. And there was no really good way to connect, especially what she was focused on was the connection between the vet and the pet owner caring for the pet. And anyway, after a couple of years of that, she just gave up and said, all right, I'm going to do a startup. I'm going to fix this. She didn't do it to make $1 billion. She did it to care for the animals. She had a very compelling vision about what she wanted to do. And it's funny, I mean, I got a front row seat. I was an early advisor, and so I watched her. She started by becoming a product person. She had to figure out this product, and she learned. She studied how to be a product person, and then she found that she was an engineering manager because she had a set of engineers that she was actually managing as they built this product. And so she had to learn engineering management. Then she had to learn marketing. Then she had to learn sales. Then she had to learn biz dev, do partnerships. Then she had to learn fundraising. I've watched her learn all of these. Her big advantage is every good product person from the CEO on down, they need to be humble. They need to know what they don't know. The advantage she had is she didn't even pretend to know these things. She's just a smart person who said, I know I need to learn this stuff. Where do I learn? And there's not an arrogant bone in her body. And so she just picked this stuff up. This is what we want. She makes a very compelling and passionate case for how they can help vets. I mean, it's only been a few short years. Today, their company has just disrupted that space with totally rabid, bad choice of words, totally excited customers that just love their product at the vet offices and the pet owners. And that's really what we're looking for. All right, I would argue great leadership skills. All right, now let's talk about the role of management. And I will tell you, if you really want truly empowered teams, this is where it happens, right here. Now, I'm talking about the people that manage product managers, manage designers, and manage engineers. I'm not talking about product managers or product marketing managers. I am talking about those managers of those three areas. That's where it happens. I love this Steve Jobs quote because I think so many people misunderstood his legacy. He wasn't dictating product at all. In fact, I think this is really, again, this probably came right from Bill Campbell, but still, he learned it. We don't hire smart people and tell them what to do. We don't hire smart people and give them a roadmap. We hire smart people and let them show us what's possible, the best ways to solve the problems that we all have. And honestly, pick your favorite innovation, whether it's Alexa, and the new one, it's another great example, or whether it's the iPhone, or any of them. Chances are I could tell you where that innovation came from, and I promise you, it wasn't from planning. It wasn't from top down. It was usually from the engineers. Big little secret in technology is the best single source of innovation are our engineers. Now you have to do certain things like have an empowered team, otherwise the engineers are told just to shut up and code. That is not. We say if you're just using your engineers to code, you're only getting about half their value. This is why I say it's not about velocity. The irony is if you work the way we're talking about, you will go way faster. One industry pundit said that an empowered team is on the order of 20 times more productive than a mercenary team. Who can touch 20x? I can't touch 20x. That just blows everything else away. So it really is. This is how you really move fast. All right. So let's talk about the role of management. There's 3 big responsibilities of these people managers. And like I said, this is where it happens. The first one is staffing. These are the people we count on to put the product managers, designers, and engineers in place. And that means sourcing. It means recruiting. It means interviewing, closing. Just to be clear, you might be thinking this is HR. No. HR might help a little, maybe. But this is on the hiring manager. This has to be done by the hiring manager because their primary job is to hire competence. And that's hard. You have to know. That's why we have directors of product management hire product managers, and directors of design hire designers, and same with engineering, because we have to get competence. So, and it also includes in staffing the reviewing, and if you have a problem, correcting those hiring mistakes. So that is staffing. The biggest responsibility is actually coaching. And this is the one, when I said that when the move to Agile really happened and managers really got the impression, some companies they were told to back off, others it was more like implied, but we really heard our level of coaching. And this has really suffered, and I didn't even realize, it took me too long to connect the dots. I feel bad about this. So I started my career as an engineer at HP Labs. And this was before the internet, so, but at the time, HP was really the Google of the day. They were the most consistently innovative company in the industry. And I didn't even realize until after I left HP, because I thought this was true of everybody. But through my entire 10 years at HP, every single day, I had at least one manager who made very clear to me that their primary job was to help me get better at my job and get ready for the next promotion. How many people do you know that actually have that today? I meet people all the time, and they say, and I can tell them, especially product managers, like, look, you clearly have never been trained in your job. Who's responsible for training you? And they don't know. They literally don't know. A lot of times their manager has never done it before. They don't even know what good looks like, and you can imagine what happens there. But this is huge, and I'm going to spend a lot of my time trying to encourage companies to get dead serious about coaching. Every member of your team needs to have someone that is coaching them. You can use it could be the hiring manager, it usually is. You could use like a Spotify model and have guilds and have others from the side responsible for it. But one way or another, somebody needs to be responsible for each person and really help them get better at their job. All right. And then finally, if you're using a system like OKRs or any kind of objective-based system, the managers have to get together and make sure that each team is given the set of objectives that make sense for that team. If it's Airbnb and you have a host team and a guest team, then you have to make sure you give them the appropriate objectives. The way it works, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the way it's supposed to work is that the managers decide, okay, for this team, these are the 3 objectives they need to focus on, and they're problems to solve, customer problems, business problems to solve. And then the team investigates it and comes back and says, we think we can do this. Those are called key results in this quarter. We can accomplish this much improvement in this quarter, and then management has the right to say, oh, well, it's not even worth it for that. We'll have you look at this problem instead, or they can say, go for it. And that's how it works. If you give teams problems to solve, and then they figure out the solutions, the best solutions. Okay, so those are the 3 responsibilities of the people managers. All right, here's an example of one of my favorite people managers, Christian. I first met him about a decade ago. He was the director of product for a company in Richmond, Virginia, and I was so impressed. I actually first met the people on the teams. Like I said, I start with the teams always. And I was very impressed with these people, and I was anxious to meet their manager, Christian, and I realized that this guy was, the reason the people were so good, even though they were in Richmond, Virginia, which is not a tech hub, is because of him. Simple, because of him. And I've since watched him do that at 3 companies. In fact, coincidentally, literally right now, this week and next week, last week and this week, he was doing a boot camp for his new batch of product people. 2-week boot camps, which is all designed to get them to competence. Right? This is what good managers do. He's doing it for his 3rd company now. And he's also become a great leader at this point. I've watched him develop those skills as well. But he's exceptionally good at developing people. He kind of lives for that. And yeah, anybody lucky enough to work for him? That's what we're looking for. All right. So now we need to tackle this issue. So what I just talked about is the responsibilities of the leaders and the managers. But now we need to tackle the other side of the coin, which is what does it take for the leaders to trust the team? So now I'm talking about the members of product teams. Stephen Covey is famous as a thought leader for things like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You've probably heard that. He has what I've always considered the best definition of what it takes to have this trust. It's really 2 things we care about: competence and character. Those are the 2 must-haves. Those are what basically, that's what we interview for in a tech-powered product company. Now, I'll talk about character next. There's some really important parts to talk about there. But first we need to talk about competence. That is table stakes, right? You need a product manager that is competent. You need a designer that is competent. And you need engineers that are. Now, to be truthful, most of the time I don't see problems on the engineering side. And partly what's going on there is that a typical product team has between 2 and 10 engineers. So there's room in that to have some more senior engineers that can coach the more junior engineers. That's normal, and I ought to argue healthy. But you only have 1 product manager and you only have 1 designer. You can't afford to have somebody that's not competent in those roles. So that's where it really shows up. And it's exacerbated because so many companies, they don't actually have a manager of product or a manager of design that's been there, done that. So they don't even know what to look for. And so you literally get, if you've ever heard the old phrase, A's hire A's and B's hire C's. This is where it comes from. They don't know what to look for. And then it gets worse because if you're a manager and you've been told to get a product manager or a designer and you're not even sure what that looks like, it's pretty predictable what they do. And you're like, okay, let's just get somebody from Google. Or, it's like a sure thing. And of course they try to get somebody from Google or from, it's actually a good time to recruit people from Facebook, by the way. But and then they come back a month later and go, no, we can't afford them, or they don't want to work for us, or they interviewed and they make some comment about mercenaries, and they say no, and and then what do? Unfortunately, what they often do is they say, oh, I found somebody, awesome skills. In fact, I'm so sick of this phrase. They'll either call it a rock star, or sometimes people will use the term 10Xer. Have you heard that? Where a 10Xer is somebody that's 10 times more productive than their peers. The thing they don't talk about is they might be 10 times more productive as an individual, but that rarely translates into 10 times as a team. And the reason is because of that, oh, yeah, well, the person does have some personality quirks. But they're like, who cares? This person's awesome. We're going to get all this. Our velocity is going to go through the roof. Oh, my God. So, which actually leads to the next topic, which is this topic of character. For those that don't know, this is the All Blacks. So the All Blacks, I got one from New Zealand here. The All Blacks, most people, this is an amazing story. The All Blacks are the most successful sports franchise across all sports, all countries, all teams over the last 100 years. Think about that. 77% win percentage. And of course in New Zealand, this is a religion, it's an institution. But, they figured something out a long time ago that was the key to their success, by their own admission. They figured, because they get these amazingly skilled and, physical specimens that come to them every week and said, I want to be an All Black. And you know what they learned? They learned that no matter how good or skilled that person is, if they're an asshole, they are going to hurt the team. And by the way, they apply that to coaches too. And they have kicked off coaches, kicked off people because they know the importance of the members of a team. And Google likes the term psychological safety for this, but if there's an asshole on the team, nobody can collaborate the way they need to. They don't want to even come to work in the morning a lot of times. They don't. It really breaks a team. It's one of the worst things you can do. So, they have this rule. Now, most companies I know, in fact, I've never seen a company that has in their HR guidelines, no assholes. Never seen that. But you know what's funny? They should. Everybody should have that in their guidelines. But this is actually a deadly serious point here. They don't have that. But what they do have, I know that all the companies I work for has something in their hiring process and guidelines that made sure that at least one person on the interview team, usually several, is looking to ensure cultural fit. You heard that phrase? So I have realized that is deadly. That is, and of course it's not intentionally mean or evil or bad, but it is terrible. Because when you talk, first of all, what the hell does that really mean? Right? Cultural fit is so ambiguous. And when you talk to the actual team that is doing this, it's like doing the interviewing. What does it mean to you? And really what's going on is they're not sure. But they do know one thing. They do know that they must be, by definition, a cultural fit. Because otherwise, how would they have been hired, right? So they are in the company, by definition, I am cultural fit. So what that turns into, the way to ensure cultural fit is to hire people like me. And this is very real. It usually shows up they're looking for, a lot of times it is visually like them, whatever. And then, but also they've gone to the same schools. They've got even the same degrees. The one that kills me the most is that so many companies, they not only are trying to match cultural fit, to them that includes how they think about solving problems. And they actually have questions in the interview process designed to see if you solve problems the way I solve problems. And I'm like telling them, what are you doing? We want people that don't solve problems the way you do. That's actually what's helpful, right? Otherwise, we don't need another person. And this is all, and it is true that the great teams have diverse perspectives, diverse life experiences, diverse educations. One of the things I've really come to appreciate, some of the best people I know have these random educations from drama and philosophy and music and just whatever. And I realize, you know what it is? They're bringing a different perspective on it, which gives us a much better chance at coming up with a good solution. So I really think that this combination of looking for people that are rock stars and then looking for people that are cultural fit are what's dooming most companies right from the beginning from having a team of competent, good character people. So I do try to get companies to turn upside down how they recruit and hire. All right. So let's just talk then about, I want to be clear, now let's talk about some great ordinary people. I don't want you to think, and I hope I'm making this point, that you don't have to go hire from MIT or from Cambridge or whatever. These are just ordinary people that you put in the right environment. Ordinary people that are competent, they're not assholes. Right? That's what we're talking about. I'll give you an example from product design and engineering. Adi is a product manager at a company in Israel called Augury. And I will tell you, I have been so impressed. A disproportionate number of the great product teams I know are actually Israeli teams, which is kind of random. It's a tiny little country in a very inhospitable part of the world. We'll say that. And it's even people there. It's a melting pot country. They come from all over the globe. You know what I think? My theory is, at 18, all males and females serve in the army for generally 3 years, and they pretty much the army looks at your high school grades and decides what you're going to be, but where they're going to put you. And most of the time, it's not like digging ditches or anything. This is real. In fact, they told Adi, "You're a fighter pilot," and they sent her to flight training for fighters. And it took about a year, and afterwards, because she had very strong sort of the technical aptitude, they said, "Hey, we want you to work on our advanced simulation software, especially on emergency maneuvers." Which she did. She worked on some simulation stuff about the best way to handle an emergency in flight. And then she said, "Okay, for your assignment for the next couple years is you're gonna train pilots." And generally, a couple times a year, they would come in for a couple days of advanced training. And her commanding officer told her, "Look, here's the thing. They're only coming in for a couple days. They need to actually listen to you. If they don't listen to you, they could die. So the pressure's on you. You need to figure out how to get them to listen to you." Now, he said, they won't listen to you unless they trust you. Now, they won't trust you unless you know your stuff, which she did. So do your homework. And then they said, they won't actually trust you or even give you the chance to trust you if they don't like you. So this idea of like me, trust me, listen to me became her mantra. And I would argue that's also great training, but it's just true on those Israeli teams, they are good at that. All right, Audrey is a designer. I hired her actually back at Netscape 20 plus years ago, and she's just a fantastic designer. She was coached by one of the best design leaders in Silicon Valley, and just became a terrific designer. Designers, and I'm not talking, just to be clear, a designer, these are not graphic designers. It's not about icons and colors and fonts. These people are your best partner for coming up with great solutions to hard problems. This is one of those things that product companies figured out several years ago, decades ago, but a lot of companies have still not really understood what real product design is. It's beyond the scope of this talk to describe it, but let me just say these people are fantastic for solving hard problems. And then finally, Lindsay is an engineer, and I like her. Look, here's the reason I like to highlight Lindsay. If you want a team of missionaries and not mercenaries, you need engineers that are pretty fearless. You are looking for that in your engineers. They need to go toe-to-toe with the product manager. They need to go toe-to-toe with the CEO. And so that's what you're looking for. Lindsay, I think, she had a disadvantaged childhood. She was bullied through high school. Luckily, she liked the program, went and got a degree in computer science and actually in drama. And then it just became a terrific developer. She's actually a top-rated iOS native app developer. She's on Stack Overflow, one of the highest-rated answerers of questions. And just the kind of person everybody wants on their product team. All three of these people, Audrey, Lindsay, they're just normal people that are great people to work with. And I'm trying to give you a sense. That's what we're looking for on these product teams. All right. So I know I'm just about out of time, but I had one last thing, which is I want to give you a test, a simple test for you to do yourself. If you're not sure, you're working in this modern, empowered product team model of these other companies. 3 simple tests. The first one is your team staffed with competent people that have good character, right, not assholes, that cover the span of skills that you need. Normally that's product design and engineering. Sometimes that includes data analysts, sometimes that includes user research, but whatever is necessary. Do you have a staff team? And I should mention, normally we do hire for competence. It's okay to hire for potential, but if and only if the hiring manager commits to developing them to competence. So they have to be willing and able to develop them to competence. And if they don't, they have to find that person in another job. But normally it's competence. Second, the team is actually assigned problems to solve. They're not given features and projects to build. They're assigned problems to solve. Business problems, customer problems to solve. And the team is able to figure out the best way to solve them. That's the whole idea of, in one sentence, that's the whole idea of an empowered product team. And the final point, though, which is this is the responsibility that comes with the empowerment. The team now is able to be held accountable to delivering the actual business results. Now, in truth, most CEOs love the idea of accountability, but they have figured out that because their teams are not empowered, you really can't hold them accountable. Because they will just say, it wasn't our fault, we didn't think this was a good idea anyway. Right? And then, of course, there's finger pointing between the business owner that just says, no, the idea was fine, the team did a crappy job, and the team that said, no, it was a bad idea in the beginning. Who knows? In this model, they are empowered and accountable. So you can apply those questions. I hope that you are all in companies that have this. I know that's not likely the case, but I hope most of you can, and I hope you consider moving if you're not. So moving, sorry, I didn't mean moving companies, but moving your organization into this model. There is that book that talks about more. There's email. I think I unfortunately used the time that we might have had for questions. I will stick around at the break for some questions. I hope this